Hello and welcome to the first ever Guns on Pegs podcast. My name's George and I'm the marketing manager and editor at Guns on Pegs. I'm joined today by Digby and Chris from Guns on Pegs. It's worth mentioning at this point that we're all working from home and scattered to the four corners of the country. I don't see why I should do all the talking, so Chris, why don't you introduce yourself first? Tell us who you are, what your role is at Guns on Pegs, what you're doing at the moment and how you've been coping with the lockdown.
I'm Chris, I'm managing director of Guns on Pegs. My role is a little bit of everything, and I'm the only person in the company who has done every role in it. So I got into shooting when I was young. My both grandpas actually were the ones who got me into it. I shot my first pheasant on my granddad's little syndicate, and it was an awfully low hen pheasant. Looking back at it, but I've still got the cartridge actually. I've got the little 20 bore cartridge.
I think that's how we all begin, isn't it? Pillowcasing things.
Yeah, pretty much. So I've got the little 20 bore cartridge here at home actually, and otherwise I'm at home, very much in isolation like you guys, and although we're doing a fairly good job of it.
Cool, good stuff. And Digby.
Yeah, my name's Digby. I'm the shoot account manager here at Guns on Pegs, also currently in self-isolation in sunny Cornwall on my family farm, which is where I learnt to shoot. So similar to Chris, both grandparents or both sides of the family shoot. And I shot my first game bird, which was a snipe on a little rough syndicate on Bodmin Moor. I don't think many other people manage to or get the opportunity to shoot a snipe as their first game bird, but that's fairly common here in Cornwall. Last couple of weeks have been dealing with the corona meltdown, so speaking to hundreds of shoots sort of worried about their future.
Excellent. And as I said before, I'm George. I'm the marketing manager and editor at Guns on Pegs, and for some reason it's fallen to me to host the podcast, which is very good fun. I'm at my parents' place in Hampshire where I grew up, which is also where I shot my first pheasant. I was introduced to shooting by my dad, and I'm pleased to say that my first game bird was a partridge that I wiped my godfather's eye with when I was about 11 as well. So that will always stay with me. Our format is fairly loose at the moment, but the first feature that we're going to do every week is called What's That You're Drinking?, where each of our guests is going to tell us what drink they've brought with them for the podcast and why they've chosen to have that. So, Diggers, you can go first this time. What are you drinking?
Brilliant. I just popped out to the cider cellar. Being from Cornwall, that's very much a part of the social life here. Popped out and got a bottle of homebrew. When I was 11 and 12, something like that, me and my brother set up a cider making company, which saw me through university selling to pubs and bars in Bristol. But it's pretty rough, but it's the proper stuff. So
is that the St. Veit Classic?
It's St. Veit Classic, yeah. 11.5%, although I never told the pubs that. It was always sold at 7.2.
That'll put hairs on your chest, won't it? Are you still making it these days, Diggers?
I'm considering starting again if I manage to get a week or two off in October, but because that's when making happens. It's quite a busy time of the year for us at Guns on Pegs, so I haven't made in the last couple of years.
How much of that stuff have you got left? I really need to know, because I've never actually had a chance of trying it.
I've got about 2,500 bottles left.
So just a drop.
Which down from, I had 15,000 left when I stopped making 2 years ago, so I think we've made a fair dent into it over the years.
Have you ever had a bottle explode?
In fact, I started making aged 11 or 12 in little old wine bottles, which aren't high enough. The glass isn't strong enough to deal with the pressure. We always used to put in a drop of sugar before bottling, so it fizzed up like champagne. And my mother was very displeased to come down to her store cupboard one day to find 6 exploded bottles in a plastic bag. I've heard stories of people having them explode on the tube and stuff like that. So I'm rather glad that's never happened. But yes, I have had a couple of bottles explode.
I think your cider wins it really as a sort of drink of choice to bring to this, because anything homebrew I applaud.
It's going to be tough to beat.
Yeah, exactly. The homebrew I have sitting next to me is certainly not for touching, and it's slow gin that hasn't had its sugar added yet, and it's very much favours for our wedding. So if I touch that right now, I'm in awful trouble. So there's absolutely
nice.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere near
So,
that.
so Chris, what have you got then?
So I have the first beer I've had in a long time, and it is a Birra Moretti, which is a lager that I enjoy. And I don't know why I like it so much, but it reminds me of when I was younger, watching sport with my dad. So if we'd go to the football up at Ipswich, Dad would have a Birra Moretti when we had a pizza before the game, and I was quite young, so I wouldn't, but I would just watch him drink Moretti, and ever since I've just, it's one of those things you always look back on and you think, oh, that's nice. That was always what Dad liked. So I've got a Moretti followed by a Barocca Chaser.
I was going to say, you better explain why you've not had a drink for a while.
It's Corona conspiracy theory. So everyone in the family has been ill, but apparently not with coronavirus, which has never happened at any other point in life. I don't get it.
Well, I hope you're feeling better now, I think, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah. I've been rolling the fields today, and I caught the sun, so I look absolutely ridiculous, which is good. So, George, what are you drinking?
So I have got a very small amount of the glass of whiskey that I poured myself when we started this. It's a Glenmorangie. It's probably a bit early in the day, really, but I thought
it's very early. What are you drinking whiskey?
That's what self-isolation does to George.
Yeah, as with the twins, and it's all been fairly full on, so I feel like I deserve it. But once I've got through that, I've got a can of Estrella here as well. I was going to have a crack at my dad's Damson gin, but I had a small sip of it earlier, and it definitely is not ready yet. So I decided to leave that.
How long has gone on it? How long has it been going for?
I think we made it in October. I think that's when the fruit went in. But it definitely
Kind of should be all right though, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think probably it's going to need a bit more sugar. It still looks pretty thin, so I don't know if we maybe need to give the fruit a bit of a mash or something as well, just to get a bit of colour in it.
Yeah, what we did this year was we put the sloes in, and I read online, actually on the Sipsmith website, don't add sugar until the end, because then the gin uses the natural sugars that's within the sloes or whatever fruit you're using. And I shake it around every weekend, and it's already really dark. So I reckon that actually at the end, just to tweak the sweetness by adding the sugar, I think it actually should work.
Yeah, I've heard that too, Chris. I think that sounds like next time I'm going to do something like that as well. Because you never quite get it right. It's either too sweet or too sour. I've never quite managed to make a batch perfect. It's much easier to do afterwards.
I had a good tip from the wife of a Jap who comes shooting with us, who makes gallons of sloe gin every year, which is that if you end up with it too sweet, that you can add lemon juice, and that takes some of the sweetness away
without flavouring it.
Yeah, you're not too much, because I mean, you have to measure it based on on the volume of sloe gin that you're making. So obviously, if you're only making a bottle, don't squeeze a whole lemon into it. It's you do it step by drip by drip or whatever, and until you feel like you've got the flavour about right. But you can rescue it.
Well, I'm just intrigued that you're starting with a Glenmorangie and then you're going to go on to an Estrella. So I'm trying to picture what you're wearing right now. I'm expecting like a tweed deerstalker, a pipe, and some of those purdy slippers that you keep going on about.
I wish that were the case, but actually, it's about as far from that as it's possible to get. I wasn't really prepared for a lengthy stay at my parents' when I came down here, and certainly not a month-long one. So I've got like 4 T-shirts with me, 2 half-decent shirts, and 1 pair of acceptable trousers. And nearly everything I own has got some sort of baby sick on it. So I've got a pretty shonky old T-shirt on at the moment and a pair of trainers. So sorry to disappoint.
You've been shooting stuff from the window while you've been down there, haven't you?
I've been going out and having a bit of a campaign on the local bunnies. There's a lot around the paddocks, the horse paddocks around our stables. So I think my count is 12 bunnies so far. I was told that there'd be lots of squirrels for me to take pot shots out from the bedroom window, which is where I'm recording from at the moment, by the way. But I haven't seen one yet, so I think I've just been working too hard.
I've been waging war on the squirrels down here in Cornwall. I've shot 5 so far. We've got a very well placed elm tree, right, sort of probably 50 yards from the house, which I can look at from the office window. And I've painted peanut butter up the trunk because I'm told that's what keeps the squirrels. They smell it from a mile off, and rather than just running in and taking a peanut or something like that and running away, they have to sit there and lick the bark. And I've only just put it on this morning. I've had great success today. I had three today with the rifle, with a 2.2, and I had 2 yesterday with a shotgun. So not doing too badly.
That's a lot better than me. I must say I'm getting really frustrated with the rabbits here. I sit at my desk and they'll start wandering around the garden, literally like something out of Peter Rabbit, like they're human, and it's really getting to me. So I go out and open the door and they run off. But the thing is, if I can't get close to them, because out the front of the house where most of the rabbits are, I need a co-pilot to be able to take me, because they don't move much if I drive up there in the car. Up the driveway.
Oh, so you can do one lamping run.
Yeah, well, that's it. If I walk up there, it's pointless. And I haven't got an air gun, a high-powered air gun, or a rifle here. I've got a pump-action Silence 410. Now, that works well from the window of the car, but I need my other half to drive, and she's been knocked out on the sofa with one of these various viruses. Anyway, I can't get anywhere near these rabbits. So yeah, they're just incredibly frustrating right now. So we're living off pheasant in the freezer instead.
Very nice. Very nice indeed. It's quite a good time to experiment, actually, given that you can't go to the shops that much. And working from home, you can sort of put on a stew at lunchtime and keep an eye on it in the afternoon. So I had a delicious venison and wild garlic stew last night. And then pheasant and leek the night before.
Oh, was that off the recipe that I put up the other day?
It wasn't quite. I read the recipe online and adapted it a little bit, and then had my wife made pheasant and chorizo sausage rolls for lunch today on George's recommendation. I think you put an article up the other day, didn't you, George, about that?
Yeah, they are absolutely amazing. We have those on our shoot days, chaps. I'm just going to get into my beer.
So we've been piling in the curries. We buy curry mixes online from an amazing lady called Raffi. So she's based in Sudbury in Suffolk, near where I grew up. And you can buy the spices, and they're like £3 or £4, and they're delivered to your door. And you choose your curry, and then you choose the heat. So you can get like a vindaloo, but you can have it mild or medium or hot or whatever. And then you can do the same with korma, which is quite funny. So we've got a very hot korma, which is quite a weird sensation. A very hot korma, and then I think we've got a medium vindaloo in there as well. But stick them in the pan, and then just chuck the pheasant meat straight in, and leave it just to simmer really slowly for a while, and it's absolutely mega. And such good value for money, and all it is just a tin of chopped tomatoes and sometimes a bit of coconut milk, so they're pretty good for you as well.
Yeah, so easy, isn't it? I mean, it's much easier than you'd think. And it's just delicious.
Yeah, I think you're right, because I think a lot of people are probably working through the contents of their deep freeze and probably going back several seasons at the moment, I'd have thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pheasants that we're eating, though, are supposed to be for our wedding. But if the wedding gets postponed, which is looking very likely considering it's supposed to be in the middle of June, then I don't know, we're just going to have to get our hands on some more pheasants. But judging by the stats you were reading out from the shoots the other day, Diggers, on how many are actually going ahead, I don't know where we're going to find this pheasant from.
I know. It's going to be a funny sort of conundrum as game dealers are desperate to get hold of more pheasants.
I've heard of quite a few game dealers completely shutting up shop. Have you heard that?
I know that a few have shut or aren't taking venison or pigeon anymore because the restaurants don't need it, and they obviously can't get into the cutting rooms. As in they can't get their staff in to do the butchery. But I didn't know of any that have actually shut down. That's quite worrying, isn't it?
Gosh, yes.
Apparently a couple in the southwest. But I mean, there's tons of issues, isn't there? Not only getting stuff abroad, but as you say, the UK market from the restaurants and everything else is just, well, the restaurant stuff's fallen off a cliff completely. I mean, it's really worrying because, I mean, we've had over the last few years, obviously, all these problems with the problem trying to get rid of the significant amount of game being shot. But this year we're going to have just a ton of different problems. It's going to be absolutely mad, which I don't know. I'm sure we'll cope with. These things, by the time they happen, usually as a sort of industry, if you want to call it that, we're pretty good at sorting these things out. We've never had a total problem.
No, exactly. I mean, we're only week 2 as far as sort of serious measures are concerned. And week 1 and 2 is usually the panic week. And I feel like things are starting to settle down a little bit, and give it another couple of weeks. When we come out of self-isolation, I expect everybody will be a lot clearer. And it's the good thing about this whole situation happening now is that it's not too late to start, hatching or start setting your eggs. Even at the end of April, you can still produce birds for the season. So long as we have some clearer idea by the end of April, not all is lost.
Yeah, do you think we'll see basically shoots having a shorter season, just starting later because of this sort of bit of commitment to the game farmers right now?
Yeah, well, my personal view is that I think we'll be well out of it by the time June comes. And as I was just saying, I think give it a couple of weeks and confidence will be back. I know that my friends in London and elsewhere who don't have a farm to mess around on in the evenings are going absolutely spare, sort of trapped in their rooms, and they're looking for anything to do to keep keep the morale high. So I wonder whether we're going to get a run of bookings, or people are going to start looking around and actually saying, you know what, I want something to keep me going when I get out of this mess, and start booking up again in a couple of weeks' time as confidence increases.
I should say, I think you're absolutely right. I think that having been cooped up for 3, possibly more weeks, people will be absolutely desperate to feel like they've got something in the pipeline to look forward to, and I think that will apply across most industries, as it were, but particularly with ours, where so many people find spending time outside almost a release from everyday life. It's going to be all the more important for those people, don't you think?
Yeah, and it really, really depends when the confidence comes back. If we can manage to get a few deposits in, or if shoots can manage to get a few deposits in a couple of weeks, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be shooting partridge in September. But if it's a month down the line, then we might not be able to shoot partridge in September, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be shooting pheasants in October. So the longer this goes on, it all comes down to deposits, as Chris said. But the longer this goes on,
I was just chatting to Charlie Jacoby actually, to a little update on Field Sports Channel, and I'm trying not to be too pessimistic about it, because, as you say, we're 2 weeks into this. It is not even the end of March as we speak right now, and yes, people can make some decisions, but obviously we've got this vicious circle on the go where the game farmers are tightening up their terms because obviously they don't want to be left with a bad debt from the shoots. So they're passing that on to the shoots, and the shoots are then passing that on to the guns. I mean, I spoke to 2 shoots today who both asking for 100% payment right now, not even just 50%, like 100%, which, I mean, you can kind of understand it in a way, but the problem is that everyone being strict on the next person and not want to take any risk on it, which I understand, just means that therefore it's all down to the gun to basically put a bet on the fact that they're going to be able to shoot when the season comes. Now, I can't see a situation right now, judging by what's going on in other countries around the world in terms of their development with the coronavirus, but I can't see a situation where we're not going to be able to go shooting. I can just see lots of turmoil before then. But if you can get the birds down, we know from our stats on Guns on Pegs, our busiest time of year, always, without fail, is October, November, December. Even after everyone's supposed to have committed. So they are then just going out for one day and then going, my God, I absolutely love this. I forgot how much I love it. I'm going to go book some more days. So the same thing will happen again. And as ever, Guns on Pegs will get manic through the season, but it will just be down to the shoots that have got availability.
Yeah, and it's going to be quite an interesting season, sort of as an observer in a way, to see what type of shooting people are going to be doing. I wonder whether the estates that currently have said no, we're not shooting, may well say, okay, we've got things have relaxed a little bit. We've got a bit of wild game on the shoot on the estate. We might just put out a few sort of walked up days, mini driven days. They might even be able to get hold of a few late poults in August and have a couple of sort of proper days in November, December. It's going to be on a smaller scale and slightly more here and there. But we're not going to be not shooting come the season. It would just be slightly different.
Yeah, I agree, and we've got to remind ourselves that we know that people go out shooting to have a laugh with their mates, and that is the single biggest reason. Now, if it just so happens that you can't do what you would usually do in a shoot season this year, people will just make do with whatever else. And I guarantee, it's going to be awesome to challenge people's perception of actually what therefore their enjoyable day is. Because I'll bet there's some people that only go on bigger days this year, normally, that will go on some smaller days that will go, oh my God, I absolutely love that. And obviously it comes with a cheaper price and everything else. And I think it's just going to be fascinating to challenge people's perceptions of what they enjoy this year. Because you'll find yourself on an eclectic mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's very. And I think, I think that there's definitely an argument that people are going to start examining what it is that they love about it, whether that smaller bag has meant a diminished enjoyment of the day. And I'd be amazed if there's a huge proportion of people who think, oh, well, if I can't shoot 300, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an absolute fraction, isn't it?
Well, especially after spending about 2 or 3 months inside or whatever we have to do. I think, give someone a gun and tell them there's one pigeon in the vicinity, and you'll find half the county out there. I mean, it's going to be absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So I think I need to just we've been going for 20 odd minutes or so I just think I need to bring this back to the schedule a little bit to make sure we don't overrun.
We've got a schedule, have we?
Well, a little bit in my head.
That's what happens when you get chatting, isn't it? It's just like a drink in the pub, isn't it? On a Friday
and
night.
It was all getting a bit too worky. So I think we're going to try and bring it back to that idea of everybody having fun in the field together. So I've got some silly questions that I want to ask you. So Diggers, tell me what your most embarrassing moment on the shooting field has been.
Very, very good. Put me on the spot, George. Thank you. I actually was thinking about that just the other day with my family over supper. I was shooting with some friends in Wales, West Wales, and we just we're sort of doing a bit of a wild walk-up day. We just had a word from the keeper who's taking us round, who said, look, guys, this is going to be great fun if we can get into position without being heard or seen, without pushing the birds off. We were after snipe and woodcock and the occasional teal, widgeon, anything that came off this little boggy area. And we're getting into position. All of the other guns had managed to cross a fence and walk down a little slope without making any noise. I then slipped and fell and made the most embarrassing shriek you can possibly imagine. At which point the bog erupted, all going the wrong way. And then all my mates were standing there laughing hysterically at me. It was incredibly embarrassing, but it ended up being something they'd never let me forget.
And Chris, yours?
I mean, it's really tricky. I was trying to think of one that's actually that I could possibly share on air. I mean, there's some horrendous ones in there, and obviously your mind just goes back to those. Do you know what? It's not so much embarrassing, but it's kind of more funny, and it was more a case of laughing at someone just for a minute. But we used to. It's actually not even about me as well, but we used to on birthday shoots. So, like my dad's birthday shoots over the years. If it's been a sort of big birthday, I think it was his 50th. All the sort of cousins and sons and whatnot were loading for the dads, and I organised a bunch of black powder cartridges for the loaders to slip into the guns of their dad or whoever it was they were loading for. And obviously, they're out having a laugh, but they're in that heat of the moment. They're taking everything very seriously, trying to shoot on their A game, and all that. And we slipped a couple of these black powders in all at once, and it was just the absolute shock and embarrassment and concern and everything mixed into one. Thinking that your gun had blown up, then there's a cloud of smoke, and just when you're not expecting it, it's absolutely hilarious. Just watching someone so confused about what on earth just happened, scaring the hell out of them. So those are always just fond memories of just basically winding dad up.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's winding people up when you're shooting with like really close friends and family. That is when you have the most fun, isn't it? And that sort of leads me on to the question I earmarked for you, Chris, because you shoot with quite a wide range of people, I think. One of the things that we like to do on our family shoots at home is poach each other's birds. It's sort of an unwritten rule that it's the done thing around us. Now, it's not always a popular thing, but I want to know who the biggest poacher is.
Oh, easy. So this one I grew up, as I mentioned right at the start, shooting with my grandpa and my dad. I was really, really lucky. And my dad was incredibly generous. And he had this sort of rule where he said to my grandpa, I will take you shooting enough times so that I've paid back my school fees that he'd paid for him when he was younger. So this was a huge amount of commitment that he'd made to my grandpa. But it was at a point where, mum and dad had been in business together and things like that. And it was just at the start. It was actually pre Guns on Pegs, and it's actually what caused Guns on Pegs to come about. But it was with my grandpa, so we'd always go out on these days, and there'd be three of us in amongst a sort of syndicate of guns that we had where we grew up, and we would rig the draw, or whoever the host was, would just knew that we'd always want to stand together, and he'd put my grandpa in the middle. Now, my grandpa was, I don't know how old he was at the time, probably mid-70s. And he is the biggest poacher going. So my dad would organise a friend of ours to come and load for him and just basically keep him upright. And he'd put one hand behind his back to stop him falling over on steep hills and let my grandpa just go for it. And he had this sort of, he just did this thing where he flicked a V sign every time you shot a bird that was going towards him. And he'd sort of like flick it up and down at my dad and me on like either side of him. And then the moment a partridge comes out anywhere near one of us, he'd just be straight off with both barrels. And at 75 as well. I mean, it was absolutely brilliant. Such fond memories.
That is so much what it's all about, though, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, but it's one of the only sort of things that you can do. 3 generations, however many years apart we were, probably 50 years apart at the time, all competing to the same level. I can't think of anything else where you can actually do that.
Diggers, who's the person that you know with the longest barrels?
Oh, I don't know. If you don't know someone, it's probably you, isn't it? No,
I can imagine you being the biggest poacher. I'm sure. Yeah, we have stood next to each other.
It's me and my cousin who, when we shoot at home, I mean, I'm not sure if you can really call it shooting. It's more like standing in a valley waiting for nothing to come over you. We'll both shoot away at anything, anywhere. We'll both stand at the back, and it's more of a case of how much lead can you get in the air rather than how many birds in the bag at the end of the day. If we end up with 3 or 4, we'll consider it rather commercial, and we'll have to consider whether we want to continue doing it next year. But me and him will go for literally anything. So probably the 2 of us combined, I think.
Excellent. Okay, well, I think that chaps, is a really great place to leave it. I think we've done just over half an hour, and I think that if we go on too much longer, everybody get fed up with listening to us. So it's been great fun. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday and your weekend, get some rest, and I don't think the weather's going to be much good, but it'll be nice just to get away from the computer for a bit and maybe get out and have a bit of a walk around and that sort of thing.
No, next week's going to be an interesting week, and I think it's probably we're probably due a sort of follow up of one of these in a couple of weeks' time when we know exactly where things are at. And I think with the amount of shoots that you're speaking to, Digby, that will be really interesting to see. And I think the one key thing that doing even just chatting now and reliving some of those memories reminds us is that thing I was saying at the start. Our strapline plan the best days of your life is absolutely everything. And if you, like us, think that there is going to be a bit of a season ahead of us, and we will be out of lockdown, and you feel you can commit to a deposit towards a shoot, then do, because I really don't think you'll be regretting it come the middle of this season. And it's going to be really exciting when it gets there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great fun.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Stay safe out there. So all that remains for me to say is thanks very much to Chris and Digby for taking part, and also to you for listening to our first ever Guns on Pegs podcast. We really enjoyed making it, and we hope that you enjoyed listening. In future episodes, we'll be joined by special guests, so if you have any suggestions for who you'd like to see taking part, do let us know. If you haven't already, do join Guns on Pegs at www.gunsonpegs.com, or find us on Instagram @GunsOnPegs, or follow us on Facebook. Until the next time, thanks for listening.